were you at when this gender dysphoria thing came across your radar? I think you were writing about this early, like you think you said in 2014. So can you take us back to that time?
Yeah, it was something I'd been discussing with friends who were interested in feminist issues, just on the topic of the idea of being cis and what it meant. We were trying to look into that. We're trying to read things and make sure we were using the right language and being inclusive and reading Julia Serrano and all these things. And I started to feel some real discomfort with this idea that if you're a cis woman, you identify with the gender you're assigned at birth and you identify with your body and you can't possibly understand what gender dysphoria is like. You know, you've always felt really happy and comfortable in your skin. And it just didn't seem to make sense to me, particularly because I'd had a history of eating disorders and particularly with anorexia. And an awful lot of articles that I read that were explaining what it is like to have gender dysphoria just seemed to me that describes a lot of how I felt as a teenager. And mentioning it to other women, they said, oh, I felt a bit like that as well. And so I wrote an article about it in early 2014, just explaining, you know, if I don't feel I'm not trans, but what people say cis is, I don't feel like that either. So what does it mean? And there was quite a lot of pushback against that, which basically was saying, oh, but anorexia is completely different. You don't understand it. Like, anorexia is an illness. Anorexia means you're mad. Whereas gender dysphoria, that's just like being who you are. It's knowing who you are and you've got to be supported to be your true self. And it just didn't make sense to me. And no matter how many times people told me that I was just wrong on this, the more I thought about it, the more I just felt I wasn't really.
Yeah. It feels to me like it's very easily kind of encapsulated in the phrase body loathing or self-loathing or rejection of your growing self.
Yeah. And it's a very unnatural, horrible thing to hate your body and not want it to grow and to want to remove bits of it or bits of it not to exist. You know, one of the things I wrote about in that first article was, you know, I was obsessed with not having periods, not having breasts, those were almost like measures of whether I was good at anorexia, whether if I could keep myself in this kind of frozen in time state. And obviously then I'm reading about all these girls wanting puberty blockers and not wanting to grow, and it just seems very similar to me. And there's always been this kind of elements of female body self-loathing that has expressed itself in different ways through different generations, I think, and throughout history. And I think sometimes we see it in a political context and sometimes we don't. But it seemed that gender dysphoria was in this magic kind of, you're not allowed to politicize it, you just have to accept it, it just is. But if you have people who are female doing the same things and wanting the same things to their bodies that girls who we would say hate their bodies are doing and wanting. So it doesn't seem different to me. And I know that to some people that just sounds a terrible thing to say, and it's read as invalidating or saying, I don't believe you're who you say you are. And it's not. It's just, I don't believe your pain. I believe your pain, but I don't believe it's sort of unique and separate in the way that you think it is. I think it's something that you share with lots and lots of female people and lots of people across generations, and that there is a political context and it's not a necessary pain.